When one turns their gaze to the southern lands of Ceridon in this world of Eris, one can quickly see the various territories under control of the crusading Agionist Orders. If you watched my Godherja lore summary video, then you know a little about these groups, and that they once belonged, and in a way, descend from, the Orders militant of the 8 Saints of the Agionist Rebellion. I'll touch on this in more detail in a little bit. You may also remember that Harthau ibn Ceridon, the father of the South, has taken it upon himself to eradicate these orders and free his people from them, as the orders themselves have largely become bloodthirsty and greedy colonizers at this point in the lore. Yet, there exists one order who, despite the death of their founder during the Agionist Rebellion, years of persecution and execution, and the growing control and influence of the mysterious and shadowy Order of the Forgotten Saints over all the other orders that have remained true to their ideals and are a shining star amid this dark night. They are the Order of the Forlorn Guardian, its people the Eosians, followers of Saint Eos the Knight, whose virtue of courage and protection stand as true today as they did when he died during the siege of Geca in defense of his dear friend and fellow saint, Leman. Now, before I explain how the Eosians managed to remain relatively uncorrupted following the Agionist Rebellion and their move to Ceridon, we should probably first discuss who Eos was as a person and his role in the rebellion so you can get a better picture of the Order's origin. Born a minor Malkosiak noble in 1057 IS, Eos' family was involved in the Noble Legion, and for most of his youth he was raised on campaign among slaves and the occasional traveling family member. Though by his teenage years he would become a lieutenant of some distinction within the Legion, the constant politicking of the Legionnaires and the Magi within caused him to transfer to the State Legions, specifically State Legio 14, the Chain Forgers. For 3 years he served with them, and with distinction, but resigned at the age of 19 or around 1076 IS due to conflicts the Legion had against slaves and regional uprisings, causing Eos moral discomfort, seeing as he was raised and friends with many slaves in his youth, so this makes sense. Despite the advice of his family, who saw Eos as a rising star and their ticket to greater notoriety, Eos became a mercenary and eventually made his way to Chevali, where he joined the Order Particular, an anti-magic knightly order. But because of his faith and lack of Chevalian ancestry or path, Eos was blocked from true membership and knighthood within the Order. At least, that was, until Eos, using a sword he stole from the Order's armory, battled with the invading Lich Wethanod Wethidoltek and slew him. Thus, Eos became the first Aversarian knight in history, at least as far as the anti-magic orders are concerned, and was gifted the stolen sword by the Order Master. I believe, but I don't think this has been confirmed, at least not to me, that this sword the Order uses for its symbol to this day is the same sword that he was gifted. Eos was also named Champion of the Order Particular, where he served until 1082, though he eventually left to return to his family and to advise the legions. The Order still holds an empty seat in his honor to this day and records him as a member of good standing. Though he could have rejoined the legions with his old rank, Eos joined as a mercenary advisor, or Heprasitos, in Legio 19, Mavia, under a woman named Legan Sansia. There he slowly began cultivating a form of Aversarian knighthood among the legion, a move which proved so effective it quickly spread to the other legions of Aversaria and drew the friendship and admiration of Sansia herself. In 1084, when the son of Autocrator Francis Pelenos' murder of a dozen slave children, which ultimately ended up being the catalyst of the Agionist Rebellion itself, reached the public's ears, Eos begged Sansia to allow him leave to protect freed slaves in Platira from the governor's forces. But Legan Sansia announced he would not go alone, and together, Eos, Sansia, and Legio 19 formally entered the rebellion. Over the course of the war, the pair would prove time and again the might of their leadership and martial prowess, with Eos' troops consistently proving strong enough to take on several Aversarian state legions at once. The pair would also form the first Order's militant and draft the codices for them. But perhaps most importantly, Sansia and Eos, through battle and adversity, had become the best of friends. Sadly, when the pair were, after a string of terrible losses, cornered in the mountain fortress of Geca, it was Eos who died fighting in 1094, surrounded in the end by dozens of slain enemies. However, once Sansia herself was captured alive in the keep days later, the other orders were quick to follow. Thus, the Agionist Rebellion, a roughly decade-spanning war brought on by 8 key reformers, later known as saints, who each believed in certain virtues and who led an army of freed slaves turned legions and militant orders against the Aversarian Empire, ended. So now we know a little bit about our founder, but what exactly happened during the trial following the Agionist Rebellion? Well, for one, Hanos, this guy, he was one of the saints and was widely considered to be the greatest legal scholar in the history of Aversaria, and he was, after some debate, allowed to represent the orders during their trials. Now, because of this, many of the orders and a few of their leaders even were pardoned, and although many of them were still executed, the rest were sent back into Aversarian society. Many of the trials also garnered some of the reforms the Order sought, but we're not going to talk about that here. Now, unfortunately for the Eosians, their leader was dead, and as they were the most militant of the Orders, had many treasonous and otherwise heavy claims laid against them. Therefore, Hanos basically had to cut his losses, and did not in the end earn them a pardon. However, he did still manage to secure pardons for Eos' relatives, who did not join his order militant, besides 2 of his cousins who did, and were executed for it. Basically, while the rest of the orders were pardoned, the Aeosians were not, and had to become fugitives. However, it is worth noting that another order, the Callistoans, were also not pardoned, as their leader, Saint Pirate Captain Callisto, managed to escape prison but died before the trial began. But unlike the Aeosians, who fled to the hills and mountains and became mujahideen or guerrilla fighters, some Callistonians fled, true, but most were hunted to extinction, so their order was kind of just dead. While the Callistoan name would come back and be appropriated by a bunch of rich merchants as sort of a slaving gentleman's club, gross, the other orders would grow in influence and wealth in the coming years in a normal capacity, becoming bureaucrats and politicians. But the Aeosians remained on the fringes, and as a result became more and more secular, their beliefs reaffirmed in the flames of their exile and their persecution. When the Agionists, having become so ingrained in adversarian politics to the point they were basically on the cusp of starting another war, were given lands in Ceridon to colonize and hopefully remove them from the political sphere of adversarian politics, the Aeosians saw it as an opportunity to leave their fugitive existence. Though small and weak, at least relatively at this point, the Aeosians rejoined the fold of the other orders during this move, although at an arm's length, and took what little land they could manage. That is why when you look at the size of the other orders' lands on the map, the Forlorn Guardian have the smallest slice and are generally considered the weakest order, even if the most noble. As the other orders became more greedy and more corrupt, eventually shedding most vestiges of their former virtues in all but name, the Forlorn Guardians became more extreme and further entrenched in their beliefs. One could argue this is generally a bad thing, as unrelenting faith, although this is shared amongst many of the Agionist faiths, is often bad. They are still courageous and chivalrous, and do not act in outright malice in most cases. Aside from killing people, which is, that's not great. Unfortunately, they are still part of the wider Agionist web, so obviously they aren't free of sin or anything, even if they are largely part of that umbrella only out of necessity, or perhaps even in name only at this point. Still, out of the other orders, they are undeniably good at heart. Their religious virtues in game are diligence, honesty, bravery, ambition, compassion, and stubbornness. That last one likely due to their zealous affirmation of their own beliefs, while they admonish and consider sinful anyone who is lazy, arbitrary, craven, content, callous, and sadistic, which are virtues some of the other orders at this point actually praise, which is terrible. But in short, they're basically the good guy crusaders if you were looking to play as one of the Agionist orders, but perhaps wanted to be the good guys, while keeping in mind that none of the orders are innocent, and that the unrelenting desire to do right and be courageous could be corrupted by the right hand, and probably has been. But if you can look past those things and just look at everything I said before that, then the Order of the Forlorn Guardian is probably for you. I also know but can't share some of their future role in the upcoming final start date of 1298 IS, which reaffirms my beliefs that they are truly good at heart. But even without that information, it's pretty easy to see, and has been confirmed by the devs even prior to this, that they are at least the least morally compromising of the group, and were the only ones left uncorrupted after the move, if that sort of thing matters to you. Until that future start date, however, you have a very pissed off Hartha to deal with, and he has a large army, but I'm going to leave that to you. I pray Aeos' teachings carry you to victory, or at the very least, and very likely, a glorious end. And that, my friends, is going to be it for this one. I know you guys were positively clamoring for more Godherja, so I literally drafted this script at work and made it as quickly as possible to feed this hunger. A lot of this information was provided by the Godherja devs and the lead dev Lonely Nights themselves, but unlike that primer video, I did not really collaborate with them on this one, as in getting their feedback or even having them look at it before going forward. I have another script pertaining to a very large topic with some of the War of a Thousand Dragon, which I talked about a little bit in my lore video. I'm currently working on it with their aid. That should be much larger. I wanted to keep this small, as I'm still wrapping my own head around the lore, and for the sake of not making myself look stupid for future videos where I then have to correct myself, wanted to cover something I felt relatively comfortable covering. It's not too much. I felt like I'm pretty secure in this. I know it's a very small taste of the Order's wider lore, but I'm kind of a sucker for these sort of knighty, paladin-y order things. I mean, look at my profile picture, that's probably obvious. And Aeos is a shining example of those virtues. You could almost consider this an Interesting Starts extension video, as I'm pretty sure I used the Knights of Aeos as an example when saying to play as the Agionist. But anyway, what I mean to say in my rambling is I hope you like this video, even if it's not to the scale of the huge Godherja one I made a couple weeks ago, or I guess a week ago. I don't even remember when that was. It's been a whirlwind. You guys are crazy, and I really want to thank you again. But of course, if any of the devs are watching and I got any part of this wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments. I don't want people who are coming to the game to get the wrong impression, or to, come into the Discord and just start spewing my wrong lore. I don't think I did that, but just in case. As always, if you like the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, as it helps me and YouTube know that you like this sort of content and want to see more of it. I would love to make more Godherja videos, either shorter and longer, depending on what you guys are interested in. You can always leave a comment for that below, and I will definitely consider it. If you would like to support the channel and are a fan of the channel, you can always consider becoming a channel member. Here are our members. There are 2 tiers, which you can see in the Join tab. Would love to have you, and thank you to all of our current members. And yeah, that's it. I cannot believe I whipped up another one of these so quickly. I hope it turned out okay. I know it's probably not going to be as cinematic as the other one was, but I mean, I think it's probably okay. It's probably okay, right? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Sol. This has been another Godherja lore video, and I will happily see you in the next one.